If I can have your attention for a moment. Apologies, I do actually know how to use the lapel microphone. It's just that due to some technical issues, we're going to have to use this to try and capture some sound from a laptop. I apologise in advance for that. But cracking on, hello, for those of you that don't know me, my name's Will, and I struggle with public speaking. I wanted to make you aware of that just off the bat, just to temper expectations. It's kind of like... we've all been there. You go to a wedding, and before the meal, you have the speeches. Everyone tends to hype up the best man's speech, only for this nervous, incoherent guy with an accent to stand in front of everyone with his hands shaking, and the first thing he says is, "I'm not very good at speeches." Immediately, everybody sinks into their chair, starving and wishing for their mortal lives to end. But in life, as they say, you get what you pay for. So just before I begin, I want to very quickly thank Tom, Rebecca, Alistair and the rest of the AdventureX crew for organising this fantastic free event. They've put a lot of work and effort into this, so I apologise for that. So hopefully now everybody's expectations have been suitably lowered. So I will take this opportunity to show you a quick trailer from the video game that we are creating. This, of course, is classic psychological manipulation. Now that I've lowered your expectations, you'll just be blown away by this, no matter how mediocre it is.
Peggy 3.
It is the year near future, and Britain is broken. Reeling in the aftermath of a political crisis not seen since an intoxicated Churchill staggered upon the sands of Normandy to declare, "Right, Fritz, let's be having you," the United Kingdom is in ruin. Facing growing international isolation, Her Majesty the Queen has decided enough is enough. It's time for one to take back control. However, given the bleakness of the situation on Earth, Her Majesty has instead turned to the stars. Enlist in Her Majesty's Special Planetary Force for Inhabiting New Galaxies as you, yes you, young boy, girl or unspecified, set a course for adventure. An adventure to establish a new galactic British empire. Venture into the cosmos, solve puzzles, engage in witty banter, endure crippling claustrophobia, gradually succumb to the sustained exposure of cosmic radiation, and more, all for Queen and country. So purchase Her Majesty's Spiffing and help make Britain great once more. Go on, do it for England! And the other bits left too. Thank you.
Thank you, too kind. So yes, all of a sudden the reasoning behind my insecure, self-deprecating and overly apologetic nature becomes clear. We've set out to make the most authentic British video game ever created. Something that truly captures the British spirit. I guess that through the process of development I've inherited some of these traits myself. But let's talk about the development of Her Majesty's Spiffing and how a small, obscure, independent video game studio from Belfast put me in more financial debt than I could have ever imagined. So, development of Her Majesty's Spiffing can be traced back to 2010. However, back then, plans for the story were a little bit different. To give you some context, I just left a job working as a character animator for a TV production company in Belfast. I tell the story a lot, so I apologise to those who've already heard it. I say I left, I handed in my resignation, and then 3 days later received a letter in the post from my then employer saying that I'd been sacked. Needless to say, the two of us left on very amicable terms. Both of us agreed that we would never speak to each other again. So I formed this studio called Billy Goat Entertainment with the intention of setting up a commercial animation studio. We, and by we I mean the royal we at this moment in time. I was very much a one-man band. Attempted to hunt down advertising work from agencies in Belfast and Dublin. Eventually we got a few gigs for Irish TV that thankfully, I'm pretty confident that nobody in here will have seen. They weren't awful, but the budgets were very modest, so you were limited to what you could do. You see, unfortunately, I was a little bit late to the party. Billy Goat Entertainment Limited entered the world less than a few months after the infamous May 2010 stock market crash that would eventually lead to a global recession that you may be familiar with. So advertising budgets had slumped. Consumers weren't buying as much as they used to. Companies were hesitant to throw money into TV advertising, and as a result, a lot of the agencies that we worked with their work for them dried up. Some of them closed, and individuals like myself just struggled a little bit more than we would have done in years gone by. So things were bleak, but then an opportunity arose. A few years earlier, the iPhone launched. What a magical device that was. And in 2010, if you cast your memory back, everybody was making apps. So in Northern Ireland, where I'm from, hence the accent, apologies, I can't do anything about it, I've tried, but bear with me. Anyway, in Northern Ireland there's an organisation called Northern Ireland Screen. They oversee the spending of public money in the television and film industry, similar to Creative England that you'll have at this side of the Irish Sea. Northern Ireland Screen's biggest claim to fame is throwing a load of cash at HBO to get them to come and shoot Game of Thrones at home. Just to clarify, not the beautiful Mediterranean-looking parts, so you understand. It's more the bleak, desolate, winter is coming, oh wait, it's here parts. But credit where credit's due, since they've done that, it's been a huge boost to our local television and film industries. So around this time, a lot of buzzwords like apps and digital media, digital distribution were floating around, and Northern Ireland Screen began to take an interest in more interactive projects. Just for a little bit of additional context, back then my plan was to make Her Majesty Spiffing into a short film, to pitch the idea to maybe a TV producer and maybe try and get an animated series out of the characters that I've been developing. In fact, just to prove all of this happened back then, I actually have a sketch here that I was able to find buried on a hard drive. So this is Antoine Bonaparte, who you'll have seen in the trailer. This is an early sketch from him from around that time. And then, in addition to that, here's a particularly awful-looking sketch of Captain Frank Lee English, the main protagonist in our game, again from around that time. So these ideas have been floating around for a while. Let's get the branding back up here. Just don't want anybody to forget what it is we're talking about. So I'd been in touch with these chaps a bit, talking about this, and as we wanted to try and get their assistance to create some sort of like maybe 5-minute pilot or a short story with these characters. However, it quickly became apparent that given the resources, or lack thereof, at my disposal, this was perhaps somewhat ambitious at this particular stage in my company's life. Also, I was informed that there wasn't very much money in short films, but adventure games. No, there isn't. Well, maybe there is. I don't know. We'll find out soon. December 2016, 7th. Go back, pre-order now. I'm getting a little bit ahead of myself as well. There's a little bit more preamble to go just before we start talking about our adventure game. But anyway, a gentleman who works at Northern Ireland Screen, whose name means nothing to you, but I'll mention him anyway, Johnny Kane, a good friend of mine now, had talked about perhaps pitching for assistance to develop one of these interactive projects. Very briefly stepping even further back in time, when I was but a lad, from a very, very young age, I wanted to make video games. In fact, I remember vividly sketching game ideas at school whenever I was 8 years old. But I'm just a dumb artist. I don't know how to program. It was never going to happen. But as luck would have it, at the time I was living with a gentleman. I should clarify as well that our relationship was strictly platonic, purely professional, who happened to be a programmer. So setting my space-themed adventure idea aside for a moment, I cobbled together a game design document for our first foray into interactive entertainment. The iOS turn-based medieval jousting game. Well, nobody's heard of this. Come on, guys. Don't leave me hanging. Nighty night. Yeah, what a hit that was. Let's just refresh our memory what that looked like.
Jealous of tea, old chap?
One dost my right, my lord.
I beseech thee, good sir. Didst thou watch the cricket yesterday evening?
One did. With catch on, not methinks one much prefers whiff-waff.
That be what spaketh thy maiden.
Allowest me. How many thanks, Elvi?
We've got an after a bet.
Moist and smells funny. The day one shall forget not.
Indeed, we did not. Let's get the old branding back up. So yes, this design document that we assembled. Oh, it was the best. It was the cat's pajamas of design documents. It was so great. The world hadn't seen anything like it. It was beautiful. So I pitched the game to Northern Ireland Screen, and we won a lottery grant which allowed us to make this groundbreaking, revolutionary video game. Obviously, it wasn't. And I have to be careful here because it was a learning experience for everyone involved. I made mistakes myself, plenty of them, but it quickly became apparent that my flatmate wasn't just as passionate about this project as he initially seemed, and expected to be compensated significantly more for his time than I had originally budgeted. We finished the game. It barely represented this initial grand vision, and disappeared into the abyss, as your reaction earlier just highlighted. And rightly so. But I learned a tough lesson about going into business with friends, a lesson that I would later repeatedly ignore to my detriment, but more on that in just a moment. So even though the game objectively sucked, we managed to complete it on budget and on time. And as it turns out, this isn't always the done thing in the creative industries. So our relationship with Northern Ireland Screen was off to a good start. They were impressed, so whenever I pitched another video game idea to them, this time with a more corporate commercial angle, they were all ears. I also should point out as well, I know it sounds like I'm just a freeloader here, but these guys weren't just giving us this money, no strings attached, no questions asked. We had to be able to match the funding that we applied for, so they would provide us 50%, or we would provide 50% of budget. They would provide the other 50% that they'd pay to us in stages throughout development. So for Nighty Night, we provided half the budget from what little money that I'd made doing this TV work, along with a small loan that I'd taken out. But for our next game, the fast-paced iOS cycling racing game phenomenon, CRC Pro Cycling, we maybe don't have time to watch the trailer for it, but just to give you a little flavour. Let's kill the music because it's very obnoxious. Yeah, look at it go. The ultimate iOS cycling experience. This is 2012. The phone wasn't capable of the fantastic graphical powers that you see today, obviously. It in no way is an example of our lack of ability at the time. Anyway, so on and so forth. Let's kill that. We're very proud of it, though. You know, it did okay for itself. But yeah, as I say, so we managed to convince an online cycling retailer, Chain Reaction Cycles, to provide the match funding that we needed in exchange for using their branding in the game, and for including their online leaderboards. Basically, it was a big ruse so they could get people's email addresses, so their marketing department could encourage them to purchase some stuff on their website. By the way, for those of you thinking that none of this looks like a narrative-driven adventure game, bear with me, the backstory is coming to an end right now. Anyway, so off the back of this, I was able to hire a small team, a new programmer that was working remotely in England, my best friend from uni, a gentleman, Alec Parkin, I said that I didn't learn anything from before, who came across from England to Northern Ireland to help me with 3D modelling and animation. Yes, sir. Don't worry, we're pressing on. Don't rush me. So we've been scraping by doing work for hire video game development. The team consists of myself, 3 artists, Alec, another 2 chaps called John and Peter. I should say as well that in the interest of time we've jumped forward to December 2013. There's a paragraph that I missed out. Never go off script. So we've got a bit of a bigger team, and yeah, things are sort of a little bit rosier. Now, back in February 2012, a few of you will be aware of this, a little-known independent video game developer called Timothy Schafer invented something called crowdfunding, which, along with everybody else and their dog, got us thinking, let's do a Kickstarter. So after sitting on this project for Majesty Spiffing for a few years, we thought, maybe this was how we were going to tell the story of Captain English, Aled, Antoine, Pierre, Commander Femkirk, and it would be an adventure game. I loved adventure games. Back in the day, Sam and Max, Grim Fandango, Escape from Monkey Island. Yes, I know it's everyone's least favourite, but it was the first one I played. I have fond memories of it. It was the perfect match, so we frantically, from the middle of the summer of 2013, between commercial jobs, began to work on a prototype. However, something that I've learnt over the years is that people are expensive. Even the very modest salary that the staff at Billy Goat Entertainment Limited were being paid, when all added together, why, it was enough to make your mother's eyes water. Of course, my mother is a chartered accountant, and at that time, occasionally helped us with our bookkeeping. So there's another piece of business advice for you all. Don't ever show your mother your accounts. She worries. So anyway, we were burning through cash far too fast to complete our prototype in time. So out of desperation more than anything else, we decided to launch our Kickstarter probably about 3 months earlier than we ought to have. And on the run up to Christmas, which didn't help. So it was doomed to fail. We were nobodies. We believed that we could make the game that we wanted to make, but we had very little to convince other people that we could. I mean, we had some character models, some pre-rendered animations, and one unfurnished, rubbish-looking room that you could walk a character around in, but it didn't make for a great pitch. So we didn't make our target, and unfortunately, I had to lay everyone off, with the exception of our programmer, including my best friend from uni, Alec, a man that I had convinced to move to Belfast a year and a half earlier, somewhere which certainly at the time wasn't somewhere with many opportunities for his unique skill set. So the Kickstarter process was horrific. During it, I think on average I spent maybe I got about maybe 4 hours of sleep a night through the whole month of the campaign. Coupled with that, I mean, for those of you aware of the process, you're shilling all the time, basically begging people to give your money. It's not something that came naturally to me. So this was very much a low point. Back then I had the energy to persevere, though I have to say if we went through the whole process again, I don't think that we would have went on. But Ran and myself were lucky. We managed to get a few work for hire gigs that we took on with the grand plan of having another crack at Kickstarter. And this process took us most of them the next year. I was able to hire Peter, our 3D artist, back. Fortunately, the other 2 had managed to land on their feet and find other work. Alec in particular was very fortunate. He landed a very comfortable lecturing job at the Art College in Belfast, and to quote an old adage that I often quote to him, those who can do, those who can't, etc. You know where this is going. However, while we were desperately trying to find the time to get our pitch to the point where it should have really been the time before, I was reading the internet very much fall out of favour with crowdfunding and with Kickstarter. The first wave of big failures were starting to appear. People were becoming much more cynical. The press stopped covering campaigns unless a superstar developer was behind them, and even then there was no guarantee that they would succeed. We very much missed the bandwagon. However, in spite of it all, almost a year later, in November 2014, we launched our new campaign with a much more refined pitch and a playable demo of the first 15 minutes of our game, which I'll very quickly, I know I'm running very short on time, but just so you can get an idea of how far we've came, this is a screenshot from the demo of the game that we released back then, and then this is what it looks like now. So, in many ways, pretty much the same, but in many ways but in many ways also slightly better. So that's the result of 2 years of my life. Well, what I will say is that this, the second time around with the Kickstarter, was noticeably much harder. I don't actually think that any press covered us beyond a couple of niche crowdfunding websites, and of course our good friends at AdventureX. Where's Michael? He's in there. There he is. Yeah. Maybe one or two other adventure game websites, but that was it. But we battled on, and miraculously we scraped over the line. I know I'm running out of time, but the last thing I would sort of want to say about Kickstarter is that, you know, as time goes on, you kind of forget the little details, particularly because the campaign was 2 years ago. And while I'm on record of saying that I will never do another Kickstarter again, as the process was horrific, at times it was exciting and very humbling. A few backers give so much money. It was nuts. They really shouldn't have done it. I felt like a proper con man. I was. Another story, we had donuts delivered to the office on the last day of the campaign, sent by one of the backers. We figured out who it was almost a year later, but at the time it was very surreal, and it was very humbling to think that this was happening, that people actually cared about your project. And then shortly after our campaign ended, we learned that one of our backers, a lady who attended AdventureX a few times, somebody who in the adventure game community people will be very familiar with, who'd backed our original field campaign, a Dutch lady called Astrid, tragically lost her battle with cancer and died. So the great thing about crowdfunding is that, you know, it's this personal connection that you have, for want of a more appropriate term, with your fans, with the backers, and I really hope that they don't feel that when they play our game on December 7th, 2016, pre-order now, that they don't feel that they've been in any way, sort of cheated out of their money, and they don't feel let down, and they'll think that we've delivered on everything that we promised. In the end, we raised £34,000 in Kickstarter. The total amount that the game cost in the end was an eye-watering £220,000. But hey, it's okay. I mean, like it's only Ulster Bank PLC that money's owed to. But anyway, that's not strictly true. We did take advantage of things like the UK video game tax relief fund, which basically gave us 20% of our budget as a cash payment at the end of each financial year. We did a few other little small odd jobs just to add to this pile of cash as it was depleting. And of course, we darkened the door of our friends at Northern Ireland Screen to politely ask them to match the funding all the winnings that we'd accumulated over the year. The last thing that I'll say about Northern Ireland Screen, and then we'll wrap up after this. People can come outside later and ask me some questions if you should so feel the urge to. I should mention that these guys at Northern Ireland Screen, they do want their money back at some point. However, their terms are much more favourable than you would get if you went down a dark alley and spoke to a loan shark or worse still, a bank. I take it those the right way around. Yes, I did. Basically, if everything just disintegrates and we dissolve into the sea, it'll be fine. They're not going to come after my family. So that's always reassuring. There are a few other things that I would like to talk about, but alas, I fear that time has got the better of us. But it was a delight and a pleasure to come and speak to everybody. Do we have any time for questions? You're shaking your head, Dad. It's maybe just as well. Thank you for your time. Tip your waitress and try the fish. Thank you.